Today, we're talking with Francis Brero, the co-founder and CPO of MadKudu, about how SaaS companies can increase conversion rates and retention. Welcome to BeyondSaaS, Francis. Before we jump in, do you have a golden nugget for us today?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my golden nugget is lately I've been using the advanced voice mode in ChatGPT quite a lot to get summaries of business books. Like I find that for a lot of the business books, like Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, some of those, a lot of the core concepts could be summarized in a few seconds, minutes. And I find it super useful to chat with ChatGPT about the book and ask like, what's the main topic? What's controversial about it? What could I use in my day-to-day? And then actually have a conversation about the book rather than going through the entire book or looking for cliff notes online.
Sounds great. I haven't been doing the chat version of it yet, which maybe I should, but I have been using it to do analysis of, I started watching Severance the other day and I'm like, give me a breakdown of the things that I'm missing, but with no spoilers.
Yes.
My golden nugget today is more pedestrian. I'm kind of loving my Amex Gold instead of the Platinum because I get 4 times points on 2 categories. And so we spend a bunch of money on advertising, and to get 4x points on my advertising instead of whatever you get on the Platinum, which is less, it's like 600,000 free miles per year for me.
Love it.
So a little bit about Francis. Francis is a math major turned AI enthusiast who started building search engines and co-founded MadKudu nearly 10 years ago. MadKudu captures and aggregates signals your sellers need, basically AI that supercharges selling tools, and I'm sure you'll tell us more about that in a moment. And I hear that you're an adventurous sticker hoarder with a penchant for Nick Cage movies.
Yes.
I am Jason Niedle, founder of Tethos, and for the last 22 years, we've been experts at accelerating tech growth through strategy, branding, lead gen, and conversion. So I'm really interested on that conversion point. And I did just watch the National Treasure movies with my 10-year-old, and that was particularly fun with him. He was all about them. So it was great. Tell me a little bit about MadKudu and how you see your role there.
Yeah. You did a great summary of MadKudu, but essentially the way we look at it is my co-founder and I are math nerds, and we have a bit of a hacking background. Like we'd like to build things really quickly. And one of the things we wanted to do was put our tech skills at the service of sellers who today have to deal with a lot of drudgery. Like I feel like as companies grow, there's a lot of process and red tape that gets added all over the place. There's a lot of manual work that needs to be done, and there is a better way than doing manual work. And so kind of started in that path of figuring out how do we help go-to-market teams align around a revenue truth, and how do we use data science to do that? And that's kind of how we evolved into the product that we are today. And my role at MadKudu, I see myself a bit as the chief AI evangelist to some extent. I feel like it's something that is transforming organizations pretty dramatically. It's really important to be on the forefront of that transformation because people that aren't are going to be left behind really, really quickly. So, helping every team within the organization figure out how they can use AI to be 1% better every single day, because like we tend to forget the law of, compound effect, right? 1% better every day leads to 37 times better by the end of the year. So it doesn't require massive change. Just a little bit every day will make you just incredibly better by the end.
I'm excited to have you here because not only are you growing your company, but your job is to help other companies grow. So where would you say MadKudu is in the growth curve, and what's your big goal for that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and to some extent, it's a moving target. So we are still early stage, I would say. We're kind of like post product market fit, where like we have traction, we have demand, we have 100 customers. But from a company growth perspective, we are reevaluating how we build the company, in part because of the AI space that we're in. I'm a true believer in the fact that we are going to get in the next few years to the point where we see billion-dollar companies that are from solo employees. And it begs the question of where do we actually need humans and where can we have a lot of agents that assist particular humans? So I think it's reshaping how we think about like growth from a like people perspective within the organization. I think it doesn't necessarily change how we're thinking about growing the business from a revenue perspective, but even how we're thinking about distribution has changed, where I believe we're entering an era where technical moats are eroding at a faster pace than ever. And so distribution becomes a really critical moat. And so you have to rethink how you're going to do distribution without necessarily owning all of that distribution if you're not big enough, right? How do you leverage the incumbents to actually help you grow faster? So that's like a big change in how we think about growing. Big change of like, who do we hire? What kind of jobs do we hire them for? Like how many, what headcounts are we going to look like? it is very possible that at the end of the year, we double our revenue and we haven't increased headcount. So I think that's a really interesting change that we're seeing in the organization.
So MadKudu is, correct me if I'm wrong, almost 10 years old, but AI, when did that come in and how is that supercharging your growth?
I think what's been interesting is that we've been doing machine learning for a very long time, which is like a form of AI, which was very applied to sales. What has changed lately is the emergence of all these frameworks and tools that allow deploying AI and teaching AI to do things at scale while being very specific to your use case. So for example, we have moved all of our engineers to a tool called Cursor, which essentially is a code editor that's supercharged by AI. And what's incredible is that we can feed our internal documentation, our external documentation about the product. We can feed it our code base. We can feed it our product requirement documents. And from there, the code editor is able to give superpowers to our engineers because now it has all of the latent context of MadKudu. And then a lot of the time that we spend is, think about how do we provide documentation to the machine rather than how do we, provide documentation to an engineer who will then like share it with his peers and build something. So it's this kind of ability to process more unstructured data that is kind of core to the LLMs has been a dramatic change. So the LLMs, I think, were a big change, but then all of the tooling that's being built on top of it, like the frameworks to integrate this data, proprietary and external, into development environments is something that is catapulting our ability to ship.
That's amazing. What challenges do you see to growth then with all of this?
I think one of the biggest challenges is that we're dramatically changing how we think about hiring, how we think about building companies. And we are, exploring uncharted territories, right? This idea that we're going to have agents help and give superpowers to every single employee within the company, and that your performance, even as a manager, is not going to be measured by how many direct reports you have that are performing a certain amount of work, but it's almost how many agents have you created and configured, and like what is like the total output of your team. It's almost more of a P&L approach. Like what is the P&L of your team, and where do we need humans because humans are inherently expensive. And like, where do we need to deploy humans because they're the best leverage of capital? Whereas where do we need agents? It's a very different way of thinking about it. It also means that then it's a different type of manager that will work well in this kind of format. Same thing for the engineers. Engineers who tend to think, no, like I don't need AI. I'm better than AI. I can do this myself. They're going to be left behind, at MadKudu for sure, but then even within the industry, I think 2 years from now. So that kind of radical change is always difficult. People don't like change, especially when it's that dramatic. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge.
How does all this affect your sales and marketing?
I think on the sales and marketing, it goes back to this idea that we need to change the way we do distribution. That's been one of the biggest changes. And it has been a great enabler on the sales side of saying, well, we need to hire people that can build automation to help our AEs so that one AE can manage way more deal cycles because they're not being sucked into updating fields in Salesforce, taking notes in meetings or doing follow-ups, knowing which account to go after. All these kind of things that are kind of back office, we're able to automate all of it so that we can deploy our rep onto the thing that they do best, which is talking to customers, asking the right questions, and leveraging all the insight that they have to put together a helpful proposal and really projecting how the company can help our customers. So it's like our reps are now really, really focused on the conversation they're having with the prospect, not on, am I taking the right notes? And then, did I forget to update this field in Salesforce? Or did I do this? Or did I forget to send this? Like, just focus on the moment and feel confident that there's automation to catch all the things that need to be caught in the background.
How does your product, how does MadKudu help feed that?
So one of the big things that we look at is, first off, like these past few years, a lot of companies have been investing a lot into outbound. Outbound is hard. Outbound requires a lot of research. It requires, being targeted and understanding, if I'm reaching out to this company, what is the value proposition do I have? Like, how am I going to make it resonate with them? What happened at that company recently that could be a good hook for me to use? All of this is essentially processing unstructured data, going online and looking through what are people talking about on Reddit, on LinkedIn, in the news, aggregating all of this and then making sense of it to understand, is now the right time? If it is, why, and why would they need us? And formulating a message and around the value prop to help the customer and to get a response. A lot of that work today, the top reps do it. Many people talk about reading the 10K reports on public filings and all that kind of stuff. Probably like 100 reps in the US actually do that. A lot of people talk about it. Very few actually do it. But doing that work to then get all the information summarized and knowing, is it the right time to go talk to MongoDB, or should we go talk to Couchbase, or should we go talk to Cockroach or Yugabyte? Like, which of the databases companies are the best to go target today, and why is that the case? Answering that question is actually fairly easy for a machine and incredibly complicated for a human. The amount of data points that you need to manage to get to the answer is just completely overwhelming for a human. So that's essentially what we do. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we solve for reps, is helping them navigate complex sales cycle in an ever-growing sea of data.
So if you could advise your younger self on how to grow this company better, what would you tell yourself?
One of the biggest things, I think, is not hiring leaders too soon. And in particular, making sure that any leader you hire within the organization is very, very aligned with your way of operating. I think we tend to over-index on leaders that have been successful at a company that's maybe one stage ahead of where we are, and we want to accumulate a lot of the learnings. But what I think is more important is, have they been at a company that operates in a similar manner? I think we have made some hiring mistakes. I've made them at MadKudu. I've made them at previous companies where you hire people because they have the right pedigree, they've been in the space, you tick all the boxes, but the one box that you don't maybe tick is, do they operate the same way I do? And in particular, I mentioned, good strategy, bad strategy in one of the books that I keep reverting back to on ChatGPT. That's because the most fundamental idea of that book is that everything starts with a diagnostic, and the deeper you go into the diagnostic, like the better your strategy is going to be. And the absence of a diagnostic is actually what leads to bad strategy. And I've seen a lot of leaders that kind of just want to apply their recipes. They want to apply the thing that has worked. But the problem is, like, that's exactly what the absence of diagnostic looks like. Trying to apply a recipe. Like, first start with a clear understanding of what's going on in the organization. What are the problems? What are the things that are working well? And from that diagnostic, get it challenged by your leaders, and then slowly put together a plan. That's probably the biggest mistake that I've made, and that I see most leaders make, frankly, is just not being willing, or not challenging the initial diagnostic enough when new leaders come in. And I think this whole idea that the 90-day plan of a leader that joins a company, I think a lot of it stems from that, where we have a bias for action. But I think in this particular case, like, the bias for diagnostic is a better thing than the bias for action. The action will be easy once we have the diagnostic.
It's interesting. Several years back, I wrote a goal setting book, and the premise was essentially, if you're looking at a map, you might know where you want to go, but if you don't know where you are, you're still screwed, right? And the diagnostic, and getting really deep on that, I hadn't put it in the context of strategy before, and being ultra clear on where exactly are we and what is the real problem, right? So you still might have your goal, but if you're not in depth on that problem, how's your strategy going to get you there? These days, what seems to be blocking you from reaching your goal?
I think nothing's preventing us from getting there. A lot of it has been shifting the organization. I think, like, shifting from a very direct sales motion to thinking about this like indirect distribution is a big change. It also requires getting into agreements with like the incumbents to be able to resell or co-sell your product. We're giving away some, immediate return with potential immediate growth today, for the promise of long-lasting growth, right? Like last year, especially Q3, Q4, we invested a lot of time and energy into partnerships and that indirect sales motion, which could have been seen as a distraction because it took time away from direct sales. But today it's actually starting to pay dividends. That's one of those, taking a step back to jump further. So I would say that's number one. And number two is just that there's still a lot of things that we're figuring out, but that's part of a startup, right? Like if we had all the answers, then it wouldn't be as much fun.
Well, and the world's rapidly changing on top of it. Are there any specific lead gen or marketing tools that are especially successful for you right now?
On our side, I would say, LinkedIn has been helpful, especially with thought leadership. Then, other than that, I will be honest and say that I think a lot of the tools that we saw work well in the heydays of B2B SaaS are kind of crumbling. Like, I'm not seeing ads deliver the same level of returns.
For sure.
Like, people that do cold outbound, like the cold outbound agencies, really not working that well. I think there has been a lot of hype around AI SDRs. The idea is like basically an outbound agency, but just have AI send emails and we go from, it's a new form of spray and pray. That is also not generating huge returns. Unfortunately, for a lot of people listening, there isn't a miracle solution. I think hard work and brand, spending time on establishing your brand, educating your potential buyers to give air cover to the outbound process your reps are running is really the one thing that I've seen work. It's just unfortunate that it isn't kind of a growth hack. It's, meet your customers where they are, speak the language that they speak. I mean, the basics of sales and marketing are back in.
With all this chaos in the world right now, what trends do you see coming up this year?
Wow. I think 3 months ago, I would have given a very different answer. I think as we're recording this today, we're seeing like the market is like completely tanking, where everyone expected 3 months ago that the market would be booming in 2025. So I was starting to see a lot less CFO scrutiny, a lot less worry in deal cycles with what's going on. And probably we're going to see enterprise value multiples going down once again. So I think that's going to bring a lot of fear in cycles. So I think, unfortunately, we are still going to see a lot of buyers that are operating in what I call FOFU, fear of fucking up, instead of FOMO, like fear of missing out. And that's going to be something that reps are going to have to learn to navigate. And even marketing, right? Like, how do we give the right collateral to help sellers close deals that are going to have a CFO involved, potentially even a CEO, even at something like at a 30, 50K range, which isn't that expensive, but we're still seeing multiple C-levels looking over all these deals. And I think that's going to continue being the case for the foreseeable future.
So needing to show even more value than you've been showing.
Show value and educating them around like, what is the value that we're delivering? Like, what is the thing you're going to get from this purchase? It isn't necessarily like direct, ROI. It could be productivity, like whatever it is that you're pitching, understand how to pitch it to a CFO, how to pitch it to a CEO, how to pitch it to your buyer, how to pitch it to the user. It might be different, but having that ready, because you acknowledge the fact that there are going to be multiple people involved in the sell cycle, I think is critical.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're going to see late stage deals just stay open for a while until time kills all deals. So until the deal just dies.
Absolutely. All right, last question. What's your favorite Nick Cage movie this week?
I just watched Long Legs with him. It's a pretty good movie. But I would say like my all-time favorite is Vampire Kiss.
I have not seen that, so I will check it out.
Great movie.
Francis, this has been super informative and interesting. Where can our audience find you?
Typically, I'm on LinkedIn primarily. I post very frequently, so happy to engage with anyone out there. And yeah, if they have questions around AI, what they can roll out at their company, may it be for single user productivity or even interested in MadKudu, they can DM me. Usually pretty active there.
Perfect. And MadKudu is MadKudu.com, madkudu.com, just like it sounds. And thank you so much for being on Beyond SaaS. To the audience out there, if you're a leader in mid-stage tech looking to grow, please feel free to drop any questions or comments, or look me up at tethos.com, Tethos.com. And of course, we love those likes and subscribes. Until next time, this is Beyond SaaS.